Here with me in the studio, Robert Moran. He's a partner at Brunswick Group. It's a public opinion and market research company. We have learned today that the G20 have only gone as far as saying that they wish to drive global growth, and they haven't gone any further because of President Trump's America First policies. Can you explain to our viewers why that has hobbled them this time?
Well, they can't drive global growth unless the two largest economies, the US and China, drive that growth. And if they're at a loggerheads, then the world's growth is threatened. And I think that is the, well, it's not even an elephant in the room. That is the room. that is the only major reason why we're talking about the G20 is because of US and China trade policy.
And I think it speaks to an article on the website of The Guardian in London at the moment, which seems to say that bad as he is, this is not me having an opinion, this is what The Guardian says, as bad as he is, this is not really all Trump's fault, that there are other reasons. And you point to the idea of a complete change in global economic outlook, so-called managed trade.
Right. So if you look at history, America at the end of World War II pushed the idea of free trade, in part because the Republicans changed their position from protectionism towards free trade. Donald Trump challenged that orthodoxy, has repositioned his own party toward a more protectionist stance, and because he is pushed towards managed trade, a number of other nations around the world have also looked at the idea of free trade anew and thinking about how they might better manage it in terms of their own national security or economic security. And remember, Donald Trump has argued that economic security is national security, and thus that's how you get to manage trade.
Now, your company, Brunswick, has come up with the trade tracker. This is what you do a lot of the time. You're tracking trade between countries, between consumers, and some of your findings have proved to be pretty interesting, I think.
Yes, they have. So what we've learned is, well, first we surveyed consumers in both China and the United States. We just came out of the field, and it was covered pretty heavily in the last 2 days by New York Times, Reuters, Fortune, et cetera. Here's what we learned. Both sides say that consumers at both sides say that they're feeling price increases. 56% of Chinese consumers say that they boycotted or considered boycotting an American product because of the trade war rhetoric. But there is some hope. Both sides hold out hope that some kind of a deal could be reached in the next year. Interesting that both sides believe that the other is an unfair trader,
yes,
which is how you come to these. But I do think there is some level of hope on both sides of the Pacific from consumers that some kind of deal could be reached.
What do you make of reports that President Xi is going to turn up and meet President Trump today and give him a list of demands that will include back off Huawei? Is that a threat to any possible close deal that might be out there?
Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure making demands or threats at Donald Trump is a great negotiating tactic.
Quite.
But Xi may have his own internal politics that he needs to play. To me, the far more interesting story that we've just learned about is these very large soybean purchases, which strikes me as a very strong signal from the Chinese to the Americans that they would like to have a deal. A traditional American president running for re-election knows that he has a good chance of being re-elected. Sitting presidents are often re-elected. And they want to have a stronger economy to be re-elected. So a traditional president would seek a deal here and try to get a deal done. But Trump is not a traditional president, and trade protectionism and skepticism towards international trade have been a defining characteristic of his thinking for quite a long time.
So finally and briefly, are you looking now, as everybody else seems to be, for an agreement to go on talking and do no more harm, rather than some kind of huge celebratory trade deal?
I would be surprised if we come to some big trade deal at this minute, just because they're so complex. I would think that both sides would want to signal to the markets and other countries that they're close and that they're working on a framework. That's what I would expect.
We will know in a few hours' time.
We will.
Won't we? Not
and
long
it's big news.
Big news. Not long to go now. All right, Robert Moran, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.